Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to play you a short highlights reel from the 1969 Japan Grand Prix. Now, since 1976, the Japanese Grand Prix has been part of the Formula One World Championship. But the event actually began in 1963, and it wasn't for open wheelers, it was actually for sports cars. Now, the first Japan Grand Prix was actually also the first international motor race to be held in Japan. And what it did was it injected this incredible amount of excitement into both motor racing in Japan and also into cars themselves. And it was really partially responsible, at least, for the Japanese car manufacturers evolving from building cars that were purely for transportation purposes into building cars that were actually quite exciting and building performance cars and racing cars and things. And so, it was motor racing in Japan at this time played an incredibly important role. And you see the excitement and the enthusiasm by the Japanese people when the Formula One, or basically for any motor racing that takes place in Japan today. And this really all began in 1963 with the very first Japan Grand Prix. Now in 1968, sports car racing in Japan switched to FIA Group 7 regulations, which was the same set of regulations being used by the Sports Car Club of America for the Can-Am series. By this stage, there become quite an incredible rivalry between Toyota and Nissan. This rivalry and the excitement that was being generated by motor racing at the time in Japan really spurred on this incredible evolution in technology. And it was progressing forward at an amazing rate of knots. In 1969, for the Japan Grand Prix, Nissan entered three of its latest R382 sports cars, which were powered by Prince Motor Company designed and developed 6-litre V12 engines. Now, Prince Motor Company had been bought by Nissan in 1966 and was merged into the company. And if you think of cars like, for example, the Nissan Skyline, that car actually began life as a Prince Skyline. And as Prince was merged into Nissan, so the Prince name was eventually dropped, and the Prince Skyline became the Nissan Skyline. But Prince in the early years was retained really as the performance arm of Nissan, I guess you could say, and were responsible for the design and development of the V12 engine that went into the back of the Nissan Group 7 car. Now, Toyota, on the other hand, was working in partnership with Yamaha, and Yamaha designed and developed a V8 engine that was debuted in 1968. It was 3,000 cc's. It was bored and stroked to 5,000 cc's for 1969, but this was a real jewel of an engine. It had an alloy block, it had alloy cylinder heads, it had 4 camshafts and 32 valves and mechanical fuel injection. And this actual engine was developed further. One of the downsides of this V8 was that it really couldn't go any bigger than 5,000 cc's. But what they did was in 1970, they actually fitted a couple of turbochargers to this engine with a view to eventually taking the Toyota Group 7 program over to the United States to contest the Can-Am series in 1971. And these Toyota V8s, these twin turbocharged Toyota V8s in 1970 were producing about 800 horsepower, which was about 100 horsepower more than the Reynolds big block V8s that were in the back of the McLaren Can-Am cars. So, you can sort of see that Toyota were definitely in the ballpark. Unfortunately, the twin turbocharged setup sort of came on like a light switch, and while testing one of the cars in 1970, one of their test drivers was killed, and so Toyota just scrapped the project there and then. But in 1969, Toyota had developed its latest 474S, fitted with a normally aspirated 5-litre Yamaha V8, and it was a quite a special little car. Now, Porsche sent across one of its latest 917s for Joe Siffert to drive. And also in this race, 2 Isuzus, which are Group 7 cars. They're powered by small block Chevy V8s. Isuzu today, of course, is a truck manufacturer, just a truck manufacturer, but in the 1960s they were also making cars. When you look at the Japanese Group 7 sports cars, they differ quite a lot to those that contested the SCCA Can-Am series in that they have very short cam tails. They don't have the big wings and the high downforce that the Can-Am cars have, and the reason for that is because they're designed as low drag cars and to achieve a really high top speed. And the reason for that is because in the 1960s, Japan really only had one major international motor racing track, and that was Mount Fuji Speedway. And Mount Fuji Speedway was originally conceived as a banked super speedway, much like Daytona or Talladega. And one of the people behind the creation of Mount Fuji Speedway was Don Nichols. At the time, he was living in Japan. He was actually he'd become a tire tycoon, and this was before he moved back to the United States and established Advanced Vehicle Systems, which went on to build the Shadow Can-Am sports cars and the Shadow Formula One cars. But the original concept for Mount Fuji Speedway was that it be a banked super speedway with a pair of 1.4 kilometre long straights, which were linked by a pair of high-speed 180-degree banked turns. And the trouble was they basically ran out of money after they'd built the start-finish straight and the first corner. And so the rest of the track was basically a typical road course layout, which then linked back onto the 1.4 kilometre long start-finish straight. But it was still a very fast circuit, and in fact the very fastest cars were coming off the front straight into the banked corner at about 300 kilometres an hour. So it was really quick, and so that's why the Japanese built very low drag cars, because it was imperative that they carry really high speed down the straight and through the bend. So anyway, I'll play the race. It's only 10 minutes long. For me, it's just neat to see this race and to consider that in 1969 motor racing in Japan was only 6 years old. The fact that these manufacturers were making these cars that were as good as anything in the world in such an incredibly short time frame, and the technology that went into these cars was really and truly world class. It just blows my mind. But yeah, the commentary is of course in Japanese, which is great if you speak Japanese, but for the rest of us not so much, but that's all right, we can figure it out. And I'm not entirely sure about the engine sounds in the cars. They may be dubbed, they may be not, I'm not sure, but anyway, enjoy it for what it is.
メインイベントの日本グランプリレース。日産自動車からは新しく開発した日産 R382 が出場しました。ゼッケン20番北野横山組、21番黒沢砂子組、23番高橋戸平組の3台です。トヨタチームは外人ドライバーを含めてニューセブン5、滝チームは世界最強を誇るポルシェ917と名ドライバーシファーとを組ませて優勝を狙います。ポールポジションは予選で1分44秒77のタイムを叩き出した北野選手が取り、黒沢選手もこれに続きます。3番手は高橋選手、 日産 R382 が3台、予選タイムで4位以下に3秒以上の差をつけて第1列目に並びます。スタートが近づきました。ローラ、マクラーレンなども加わって31台のマシンによる国際レースです。スタートです。ゼッケン3トヨタセブン、出足よくトップに立ち、第1コーナーのバンクで14番シファードのポルシェが2位につきました。120周720キロにスピードをかける31台のマシン。7.6 リッターのビッグマシンローラ、スピンしてコースの外に飛び出しました。ポルシェ917トヨタセブンにぴったりとついて2周目に入ります。7周目高橋選手、1周遅れの車を抜き、そしてヘアピンカーブで鮮やかにポルシェを抜きました。ゼッケン5トヨタセブン。8周目21番の日産 R38 にもポルシェを抜いて2位に上がりました。20番サファリカラーの R38 にもポルシェを抜くチャンスを虎視眈々と狙っています。ヘアピンカーブからラストコーナーを走る上位4台。ゼッケン23番快調に飛ばします。ゼッケン23番1周遅れのトヨタセブンを捉えました。S 字コーナーの立ち上がりで瞬く間に抜き去ります。28番はベレット R6。 ピットインの車が多くなってきました。期待されたマクラーレンは完全にリタイア。ゼッケン6番トヨタセブン、ピットインの繰り返しで入賞圏内から脱落しています。23番エンジントラブルのためスピードが落ちました。 21番黒沢選手の日産 R382 が代わってトップに立ちます。ポルシェ917は1周遅れです。21番黄色の R382 豪快に走ります。続いて20番北野選手です。必死に追い上げるジョーシ・ファート選手。傾斜角30度のバンクを一瞬のうちに日産 R382 が走り抜けて行きます。2台の R382 は次第に3位以下を引き離していきました。そして47周目、ついに1周差をつけました。周回を重ねるにつれ、日産 R382 の独走態勢となってきました。北野選手58周目でピットイン。素早く給油を済ませてドライバー交代をせずにそのままコースに戻ります。60周目、今度は21番黒沢選手がピットイン。果たしてこの間にトップが入れ替わるでしょうか。黒沢選手もそのままコースへ。120周720キロの長丁場を1人で走り続けます。順位は変わらず1位21番黒沢選手、2位20番北野選手。いよいよ最後の1周です。トヨタチームに囲まれてヘアピンを回るゼッケン21番。20番差を詰めました。ついにゴールを迎えました。栄光のチェッカーフラッグが振られます。日産の R382 堂々の優勝です。タイム3時間42分。日産 R382 の高度な性能と優れた耐久力で優勝を勝ち取りました。